Alright guys, we're back with another video. Wanted to do really like a recap of this year's free agency trade period, AFL off season, right? Talk about some of the players that have moved teams, talk about some of the trades, because there were some like real doozies in here. Like they man, what are some clubs thinking? Including one in particular, which we'll get to, but a couple I'm super not happy with. But yeah, we'll be using just the AFL website for this one. I think it's the only one that kind of has everything put together. Um, yeah. So I think this is going to go in reverse chronological order. I don't know if there's a way for me to like flip that, but it is what it is. So I'm guessing the last deal that happened was Stringer to the Giants. I think this is kind of a nothing move. I've got here like just a quick best 22 like predictor thing. I mean, their forward line's fine. Oh, you can't see the thing there, but like the Giants' forward line was fine. I mean, Hogan won the Coleman. Uh, it feels like guys like Brett Daniels and stuff. They're serviceable. Um, Maybe a bit injury prone. Stringer's just kind of like a backup, but I mean, Stringer struggles to stay fit himself, so I don't really get why this was like a priority move for GWS. I thought them pulling out was actually a good thing the first time, but I don't know. It Stringer will have like one good game of like I don't know, 3 goals or something like that, and then the media will say like, "Oh, yep, see, this was a huge like winning trade for GWS," but I don't really see it unless Stringer like actually like locks in this off season and doesn't come back weighing double what a professional AFL player should weigh. We'll see. Then you've got like the first actual like mega trade. It was the Bailey Smith one. I think the Dogs kind of got robbed in this. The problem is, and I'm going to bring this up a lot in this video, I really dislike how player centric the trade period has become. Where if a player says they want out, you have to do it. You, these are contracted players. You can hold them. Oh, but you don't want an unhappy player at the club. Well, then they shouldn't have signed the contract, right? You hold them to the contract. Um, or the AFL should just put something in saying like, hey, it's a no trade clause. You're not getting traded within the first, say, like half of your contract. If it's guaranteed money, then it's a no trade clause. Or we go with the like soccer approach where if you leave the team, you have to renegotiate your deal. I think that might help because clubs will be less willing to renegotiate deals. Either one of them, I think that the current structure is terrible because like losing Bailey Smith and really all you get is like 17 back. That's disgraceful. Like that's really bad. Bailey Smith isn't that crazy. Like Dogs fans will overrate him, but he is very good. I'm just saying that he's not Bontempelli. He's not Nick Dacos. He's not Harley Reid. He's not anyone that's like that top caliber. He's next up. He's going to be the star of the league. He's just very, very marketable, and that's what. And I mean, you can do the whole background into Cotton On sponsors Geelong. Bailey Smith is Cotton On's biggest brand ambassador. I wonder how Bailey Smith got in his mind to go to Geelong. Like, huh? What a coincidence there, right? Um, but Geelong's been, even Geelong fans know that they do like under the table stuff. It is what it is. The AFL is not like the fairest league in the world. A lot of amateur stuff happens. We've got terrible actual like league leadership, which allows all this stuff to happen. But the actual trade itself, so the Dogs got a first 17. I mean, that's terrible. That should have been a top 10 pick. If not a top 10 pick, a top 10 pick. So, like, anywhere between like 8 and 13. That's bad. Matt Kennedy is actually a pretty good pickup for them. Dogs have been needing someone that's just like this, a free to slot in either half forward, midfielder. I think Matt Kennedy's actually a good enough kick that he could play in the back line as well. But in this day and age, you don't actually need to be able to defend in the defensive line. But the rules have made it that disposals is really all that matters. It's the only thing that gets votes. So why not just put them where they can get all their touches, right? But I think Matt Kennedy's actually a really good pickup for the Dogs. I think getting rid of Jack Macrae is also a good thing. He has dropped off. Whether or not he's dropped off to the point of he's just another player, I still think he is above average. But I mean, another inside mid for the Dogs that they're just full of inside mids. Granted, they are getting rid of Bailey Smith, so I don't know. There probably was room there to keep Macrae, but when you consider the money and everything, I think when you consider the money and the position the Dogs are in, like in the long run, this actually isn't too bad a move to get rid of Jack Macrae. A third round pick is probably all you're getting for him because he is an older player. I think that's fine. And Carlton get 38 for Matt Kennedy, who I think they weren't going to delist, but they basically said, hey, you're not really got a spot here next year. So I think getting anything is good. Getting a third for Macrae and second for Matt Kennedy is interesting. If this was swapped around, I'd probably feel a bit better about that side. And then if this was a pick between, like I said, like 8 to 13, 8 to 14, something like that, it just optically looks a lot better. Second round pick is good as well, but the second round pick goes to Carlton. If that had also went to the Dogs, maybe then I'm fine with that. But yeah, I don't know. So this one, I can't stand this trade, man. This trade legitimately has made me like, do I want to watch the West Coast Eagles next year? I might not. I might, I don't know, wait until they fire someone. I think our list manager needs to go, and I think Don Pike is setting us up to be Adelaide again. So he traded all of Adelaide's first round picks for a couple of years to trade for all these like middle-aged guys that they're still lacking picks to deal with. So Adelaide's stuck with all these guys that are like approaching 30, over 30, mid-30s, and you can't do anything with them. You can't bring in guys because you haven't got any picks. They aren't leaving because they're on high contracts, and they're just not worth much. So, yeah. But this Barrass and a future fourth. Okay, so this is another issue. They don't really report trades correctly in the AFL. This has changed like 3 times, this trade. This was originally just Tom Barrass, then it was Tom Barrass and a third, now it's Tom Barrass and a fourth. In return, they get a first, a second, and a third. Okay, I'm just saying because like I'm seeing this and I'm thinking it's like an NBA like condition kind of applied to it, but it's not. It's Hawthorn's pick. I don't know why you would put that in. If you're getting it from Hawthorn, of course it's tied to Hawthorn. I'm not against this trade. The problem is the optics of this part of it. I think West Coast like bowing down and adding in a pick of their own just shows how weak they are in trade negotiations. And in terms of placement, our pick is going to be better, like kind of like per round, than all of these picks put together, right? So Hawks are not going to be bad next year. They're going to make top 8, which means they're going to have a less than 15. What are we going to say? Less. I'd say having a pick like say 15 to 17 is like real like common. I mean, once you get the father sons in, apparently next year is all like messed up with academy picks. That could be like a 20th pick, right? So we're trading Barrass, who, I mean, again, the AFL has to do something about these contracts. He signed with West Coast last year because West Coast were down enough and lacking players that he could get that 5-year deal, maximize the money. But if he didn't sign that, we would have got better for him, right? The compensation system sucks, and it makes this look bad because if he didn't sign, we would have got better. And also, just the fact that he signed with the team that was lower, so like that he'd get more money to request another trade next year to a better team. More players are going to start doing that. They always bring it up as like the that player wants to go home to Victoria. That's absolute BS, and everyone knows that. You're a pro athlete. Going home has nothing to do with it, right? It's you want to play for a winning team. This, I mean, it really just comes down to what are these picks going to be valued at. If injury, like a catastrophe hits Hawthorn, a bomb drops. These are good picks, right? To have. You got 1, 2, and 3. Again, you can't just say a future first round pick. Say a 2025 first round pick. I don't know why we use future. Just say the year it is too. But whatever. And the whole thing about like these are just going to be flipped into. Sorry about that. The rain just decided to kick up like super loud, and I could see like it was making the microphone go weird. But yeah, so like these picks could be good, they could be bad. I'm not. If this was the haul for Barrass, that would be a lot better. I thought just a future first, and a future second being 2025 first, 2025 second. For Barrass was good. I don't like this being added in. Next, we're on to like one of the weird ones, right? So like Parker to Sydney. I'm guessing it's just to like kind of extend his career a little bit because Parker is not over the hill yet. He's kind of struggling with the fitness part of being like an older player, but he's not over the hill yet. He was having a lot of like very important games for Sydney going into their finals run, right? So, Parker. Oh, I thought this guy was going to Sydney. Okay. Parker and Constantly, which I don't know if he's ever played a game, and I'm not really. I mean, I'll have a quick look. Has he played a game? Does not look like it. Nah, has not played a game. So this has to be like a salary thing. Like there's just like a line they have to hit. Parker for a third, probably around about what you'd get, considering we go up McRae for 45, Parker for 44. I'd say they're basically the same player. McRae's probably in a worse situation. It is what it is. I'm fine with this trade. I think we'll see how Luke Parker goes. It's another midfielder for North Melbourne, but at least Parker can go forward. The Roos have kind of had an issue where all their midfielders are real terrible kicks, so they can't really go forward. Like LDU can't go forward. She's all you don't want as a forward. I mean, they're doing it now, but I think he's better as a midfielder. They've got all these guys, right? Like you want them on ball, midfield, inside mid. It's hard to do that when there's 6 of them. Caleb Daniel, this one I don't actually agree with for North Melbourne. I think Caleb Daniel is someone that just doesn't really fit the structure of their team. He's not young, so it's not like, oh, okay, they're getting someone that they can prove over time. He's not young. Injury history has been pretty good the last few years, but obviously there's concussion issues. The last couple of years he's been good, but I mean, what, are you going to slide him into the half-back line? Like, what are you going to do? I think Caleb Daniel's days of being a defender are past him. I think he's just kind of gotten a step slower. But a second-round pick for him is kind of an overpay as well. The Dogs really did get a couple of picks, didn't they? They got this one from here. Yeah, I mean, this is one that it's hard to say anything because you have to see how they line up. So Clarkson is going to try something. I don't think it's going to be Daniel on the forward line. It could be, but I don't think it will be. I think it will be Daniel as either a midfielder or a backman. midfield is just so packed, right? For Kangaroos, it's not like it's stacked; it's packed. Um, it's just there's so many people that want to play inside mid there. So you play him in the back line. Let me just see. Right, so like I pulled up Supercoach. It's really the only way that I can kind of show what the like North list is looking like. There is another website, but it doesn't show it on screen, so you don't see it in the recording. I mean, you kind of got like just a bunch of nothing guys. Like Callan Dawson's not really that good. None of these guys are really playing consistent games. A couple of guys have been delisted already. I mean, Luke McDonald, I guess, is playing. Powell's midfielder. Scott kind of playing defense last year. Serha forward. Core. Maybe it's to push like guys like Core out because they're just not doing much for the team. Is what it is. We'll see how this one goes. I don't think this is a bad move. I just think it's like a really weird move. I don't know what the plans are here. Like, couldn't you take a better prospect player than Caleb Daniel with the second round pick? We'll see. Peatling to the Crows. I think the Crows really had like an underrated good trade period. Lost the word, but yeah, they got Peatling in. They've got a couple of guys in. I think that team kind of is refreshed a little bit. I don't know how much better they are, but yeah, you kind of just got to refresh that team. It was kind of looking a bit stale. Add in a bit of fighting for best 22 roles, like, you know, instead of everyone's just kind of guaranteed a spot. So for a future second, they got Peatling, a third, and a fourth. That's a W. That's a very good trade, actually. So next year, so they're banking on Adelaide being better next year, and I think they will be. By how much, don't know, but this year they were really bad. They couldn't win away, and they just really look stagnant in the way that like they move the ball up forward. Peatling's a good player. That's a real good trade for them. Rioli for 6 and a second. This I don't get it. I mean, it's the whole like, oh, but Dimmer's gonna overpay because he wants his players. Just don't get the player, right? Like, does Dan Rioli fix Gold Coast? No. Does Dan Rioli being at Richmond make them a top 8 team? No. This trade, they did not need to overpay for it. They could have just walked away. I think Noble is just... Noble was a better deal than this was, and gives you basically just as much. You know, you'll have a lot of Victorian media and stuff like that pull out the champion data, like rankings, right? And it gives every player that they're ever talking about elite, right? They've never talked about a player and it's came up bad. It's always elite. So like that, they can always make the point that, oh yeah, this player's really good. This did not need to happen, right? This is just another bad year for Gold Coast trading, right? Rioli in a third. They got a third back and 3 fourth round picks. I mean, nah, this is a terrible trade. This is the second worst trade of the period. Just horrible, right? Like this, I mean, number 1 is going to be the Eagles trade for pick 3, right? Number 2 is this, and then number 3 is Dan Houston. What Port kind of got back, right? I don't actually think that was as bad as some people make it out to be for Port, but it's still the third worst. This is a terrible, terrible trade, and one that like Gold Coast are gonna regret, because there was definitely a better player at pick 6 than Dan Rioli in 2025. Yeah, and a second. If it was just pick 6, maybe you cut out a couple of these and you drop the second, right? It's just that for Rioli in a third. Maybe I'm a bit... Nah. This is a terrible trade. It shouldn't have gone for 6. This is the type of player that should have went for that Bailey Smith, like 17. 6 is just a huge overpay. And I won't hear about, oh, but all the top players are Victorian, so they won't want to play in Queensland. You're a pro athlete, you play where you get paid. It's that simple. We need to stop with this whole like, oh, well, the player wants to come home, we should let them come home. No, you go play where you get paid. And then the Bolton deal, man, this is the third worst. This is a WA just took so many L's in this trade period. We're already 20 minutes in, so I'm going to try to speed through a couple. But Shea in a first, Shea in 14 for 10, 11, and 18 is terrible. Huge overpay. Maybe one of these, maybe two of these, three of these is terrible. I think 11 and 18 should have got Shea over to Freo. Again, it's another player that Freo do not need. They really like, but what they need is to get rid of one of their rucks. Sean Darcy or Luke Jackson has to go. One of them, fine. I think he kind of tried to keep Jackson. He's younger, he's a bit more athletic and stuff like that. He's a bit more suited to kind of like current day AFL, the way it's played. Like if you can't get a first for Darcy, then you're kind of like in the mud as a team. This is such an overpay, right? For a player that is not going to make Freo a grand final team. They're not contenders. They're not even like serious potential contenders, right? They're going to finish somewhere between like 6 and 8 on a record that makes them like they'll probably get in by percentage. They're not a good team, right? Freo have so many defensive problems. They've got Luke Ryan who's playing just for stats. They've got, I think, kind of like one of the weaker captains. Their forward line is terrible. They can't kick a goal consistently, and they can't kick a winning scoreline consistently at all. This is a terrible pick. Shea has like 5 good games a year. This is terrible. Like, this is a really bad trade. I guarantee it, 10, 11, or 18, they would have got a better forward than Shea is. And I won't hear about the midfield stuff. They have a good enough midfield. Trading for Shea as a midfielder, like with the idea that he's a midfielder, makes this trade even worse. I mean, this is a nothing trade. Melbourne get a player that they kind of need. Sharp has been good. I think he's pretty clean as a player. Demons are just kind of set to fall, right? They have to fall for a couple of years, rebuild this team. The second Gawn retires, Melbourne are screwed because they haven't got another ruckman that's even close to AFL level. I haven't heard anything about the like upcoming drafts for ruckman. Yeah, they probably should have moved on Clayton, like just for the sake of getting in some picks, but because of his contract and the situation, you're probably not going to get much for him. Yeah, I mean they're in a whole different situation, but for the Lions, Harry Sharp's not like a consistent, always playing type of guy, so getting anything for him, I think, is a W. Onto the Houston mega trade, right? So Collingwood got Dan Houston, which right after this came out, I kept seeing the pictures of like him and Nick Dacos as kids. So I guess this was always the plan. Pretty good on Collingwood to not have this get out like so much. It was like there was a bit of talk about Collingwood going in for Dan Houston, but it was mostly Dan Houston and Carlton, or Dan Houston and North, and Dan Houston and a bunch of other teams, right? Collingwood was not at the top of the like rumor mill, so that was pretty good on them to keep this low, and I think it's kind of helped them in this trade. If that kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger, they would have had to like pay a bit more, I reckon. Just how AFL rumors work. So Port got Lukosius, Joe Richards, and Rory Atkins, number 13 and 2 seconds. This is actually really good. That's a good return for an all Australian. Not exactly. There has to be something more to it, but this is actually not. If you're looking at foundation for a trade for Houston, I think this is where you start. The problem is none of this is really doing it for me. Lukosius, I guess, can like have a bit more freedom here. I don't know. Maybe it's like a lifeline type of deal. Richards, I think, is a good pickup for him. He showed some potential for Collingwood. Now it's just a matter of, was it Collingwood's system or was it Joe Richards? And then Rory Atkins is nothing. That's just fodder to make the trade lineup and maybe give them a bit of depth when it comes to like mid-season, because Port always have injuries. So I think if you look at this and then can I do this? No. And this. If you look at that part, I think it's not the worst. I think it's not the worst trade ever. It would help if Lukosius was a bit better, and it would help if Joe Richards was a little bit more proven. Rory Atkins is a nothing. Maybe if it was one more first round pick, right? Like if it was one more first round pick, then it would have been good. But 1 first, 2 seconds, and a third for Dan Houston. They're giving away a future first, but Port always give these away and then end up back in the first round, so that's not too bad. They are giving up a second and a third themselves, which isn't great. I think Port really should have only had to give that up, but the way the 3-team trade works, right? They probably have to give those up. Collingwood got Dan Houston and Port's third. That's good for them. I mean, the problem with Collingwood is they're kind of lacking in young players. I saw, it would have been this morning, I think they've got 8 players over 30 that are like primed to be in their round 1 team or round 0 team. So they're probably lacking a little bit of youth that could hurt them coming mid-season, like once the injuries start to set in. We'll see how that goes for them. They didn't really give up much, like Richards, Noble. I think Noble's kind of always going. Future first and a second, which I think the first went to Gold Coast and then the other ones went to Port. Gold Coast got Noble, which I think is good for them. He's kind of the player that they're needing. This is not an overpay, right? Lukosius, Atkins, and a first. Maybe 13 for Noble could be seen as an overpay, but this is a lot better than what they're trading for Rioli. I guarantee that. And honestly, I probably think Noble's a better player than Rioli is. A future first from Collingwood and a future first from Adelaide, and then a second round pick. That's a good return, actually. I think that this is one of the better returns for the trade period. Definitely for Gold Coast. Yeah, I don't know, this is a very well-rounded trade considering it's like a big trade that has an All-Australian in it. I think all teams come out here looking, I wouldn't say looking good, because Port don't look good. You replace an All-Australian with Rory Atkins, but like they look okay. Like they all got what they wanted from it. And then that's a trade up. We're not going over that. And then you got this one. This is a terrible. This genuinely could go down as the worst AFL trade ever. It's very possible. We'll see who gets picked at 3, but it's very possible this goes down as the worst pick ever. The worst trade ever. So West Coast traded pick 3 and 2 4th-round picks for Liam Baker, who was out of contract and going to the is it the preseason draft? Is that the rookie? Yeah. So I think it's preseason draft. If Richmond weren't going to take him because he said he wants to play in WA, they wouldn't have taken him. If you're going to hold the idea of you have to trade players that request a trade, then you can't also say, oh, you can't let them walk to the draft because what if that team picks them? You can't play both sides of the fence there, right? So Baker would have went to West Coast for free. Always was officially delisted. Pardon me. Hopefully I've edited that out. Always was officially delisted. So you didn't have to pay anything for him. You had to just pay his contract. We got a first. We got 12. We also got 14. But we had to trade 14 for Baker, who, like I said, was out of contract. We could have got him for free. So Baker could have got for free. Always could have got for free. First round pick at 12. We already had 3, so we had better. And a 4th round pick at 73, which we already had better. We had 63 and 68. This might be the worst trade in the history of trade deals. This is terrible. When I saw this come through, and I saw it was official, because it came through like an official account, my instant reaction was I'm not watching Eagles next. I'm not watching any Eagles football next year. And I hope Harley requests the trade the end of next year. We are not getting Chad Warner because we're going to finish like 17th. We're going to finish 17th. Then Sydney are going to say, okay, we want pick 2 for Chad Warner. Well, we're just going to give it to him. Okay, so now we've traded pick 2, that was Harry Sheezel. We took pick 1, which was Harley Reid. We've traded pick 3, which could be like, Josh Smiley, something like that, right? It probably doesn't fit the team, but let's just say we traded that. We're going to trade pick 2 next year for Chad Warner, who's going to be a year older, coming off a team that like has made the grand final twice and has got smashed twice. This is terrible. This is horrendous trading from West Coast. Don Pike has to leave, and the list manager, whose name I keep forgetting, but it's like Matthew something, has to go, right? Like, they have to go. This is the type of trade that makes it now, we need a rebuild to start our rebuild, right? So we're kind of in the same situation as North were. They have to rebuild to set up a rebuild. This is terrible. Baker's 27, Always I think is 27. No, I think Baker's 28 and Always is 27. Graham isn't young either. He's probably like 26, 27. This is horrible. We lose Barras, so we don't have a proper second tall. This is terrible. I guess we'll go over the other parts. I mean, good for Richmond. They got 14 for a player that was leaving, right? That they didn't have to get rid of, honestly. They didn't have to get anything back because he was out of contract. He was going to go to the draft. And they weren't going to bring him back because they've got so many picks that they'll just draft someone in his position. And then Carlton get pick 3 for Matthew Owies, who has had one good season in his AFL career, and it was the season that Curnow was hurt and Mackay sucks, right? Of course he kicked 30 goals. Curnow's injured, and Mackay's not that good. I have to move on because that trade just gets me mad. D's get pick 9. It's a pick swap. D's need a top 10 pick. They need talent in that door like yesterday. That's how bad it is there. And then this one. I mean, these were the picks that I think we ended up getting. No, we got Hawthorn's picks. So Hawthorn get better picks because Carlton going to be worse than Hawthorn next year. Man, terrible, horrible, just horrendous. Pick swap. Graham, they got round 2 compensation, which I think get rid of compensation. I think if we just drop it, right, like just drop the whole compensation idea, more teams would be happy than unhappy. Getting pick 7 or 8, I think it was 7 and it's moved to 8 because of like father-son stuff, or it was whatever, for Josh Battle is horrendous. Like that how does no one goes, oh wait, no, that shouldn't work like that. And like I said, if the Eagles didn't sign Barras, we would have got better than what we get for trading him. So it kind of devalues players trading. Graham, I actually don't think is a bad pickup for us. It is what it is. Darling for, compensation of... Actually, no, this was a trade for pick 67, which we ended up trading to trade down. The rebuilding team that trades down in the draft. And then Isaac Cumming, I think, is also really good for Adelaide. Adelaide really did a good job, right? I wish... So Adelaide get rid of Don Pike, who's a horrible trader, and trades your team into just a terrible 10-year span. They get rid of him. They bring in some new list managers and stuff like that. They've been there a couple of years now. I think Adelaide probably had one of the best trade periods, right? When you look at it, they got in players that are just good. Probably look for someone a bit younger than Isaac Cumming, but yeah, is what it is. I forgot Carlton got Nick Haynes. Maybe that's why they weren't so in for Houston. I think this was a pretty big overpay. Perryman for like compensation of 16 is another one where like this doesn't make any sense. Perryman is not that good, right? Like he's fine, he's serviceable as a depth midfielder, but he's not that good. Josh Battle for pick 8, yeah, it's terrible. Himmelberg out, I think is fine for Adelaide as well. So that's about it. I thought this would be under 30 minutes, but when the Eagles make horrendous trades, yeah, I end up having to talk about it for a little bit. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought about the trade period. I think it was just a horrible period overall. I think that we should rework it that the trade period isn't a period. It's an off-season thing where you can just trade throughout. It doesn't have all these journos like sitting at a desk for 12 hours saying, where's the trades? Where's the trades? If we have it, say it starts the same day, that Monday or something like that, but it runs through past the draft, say maybe 2 weeks post-draft, ends up being, say, about a 6-week period, but it's just really an off-season section. I think we'd see more trades. I think there'd be more... The problem is there'd be a lot more, for lack of a better term, shit talking, right? But yeah. Anyway, I think they should just scrap the way that the current AFL off-season is and just rework it. I think it's terrible. And journalists only make it worse. But yeah, let me know what you guys thought of the trade period. Did your teams get anyone new? How are you feeling about the upcoming season? I think it's easy to say, like, this team's going to finish up here, but yeah, Collingwood didn't even make the 8 last year, and a lot of people would have had them pegged to go at least deep into the finals, if not win another one. But yeah, I'll see you all next time.